So every opportunity I've ever had doesn't come from thin air. It comes because you've created tables and you sit at those tables. And when you sit at those tables, you can assess the value of those tables and the value of the people at the end, et cetera, and make a logical decision of which table is the right table for you to stay and have dinner. A core advice to me is, if you're in that stage where you're trying to navigate your next steps, just do more things. Just put yourself in more situations which might create opportunity. And by being busier and busier and busier, you ultimately are able to narrow down and decide, well, these ones don't work for me, and this is maybe not right for this, but begin to navigate to the ultimate one that is the right one to finally, fall in love and get married to. I want to change the industry. I want to change the world. I want to do something that's going to really make an impact. I don't think anything is quick or anything is easy. If you build up your ammunition, if you build up like the reserves that you have from all the experience and everything you've done in your career, you can put that to work in a concentrated way to allow people access to understand and to learn that.
Welcome to the Smart Venture Podcast. We're here to bring you the latest and greatest from the Silicon Valley, where unicorns roam and innovation never sleeps. We've got top investors, superstar founders, and well-known tech executives lined up to share their secrets on building and investing in successful companies. Just a quick disclaimer, while we may sound like financial geniuses, but please don't mistake us for your friendly neighborhood financial advisors. So let's get started and dive into the wild world of tech entrepreneurship. Hi, Karl. Thank you so much for joining me on Smart Venture Podcast today.
Hi, Grace. Nice to be here.
So you are a legend who have built an amazing personal brand. And before we jump into the personal brand building, I just wanted to give the audience a little background of yours. So basically you started your career in international development team at Petrotech. You founded your own company, Clearview Networks, and China Exports Finance. And then later on, you joined DigitalOcean, helped to scale the company from the first product to 6 years later, prepare it for its eventual IPO. And to start off the show, I would love for the audience to know more about what is one experience that changed your career direction early on, that or any one experience that you feel made the biggest impact in your career?
I mean, nailing it down to one is a very challenging task. There's multiple forks in the road, I think, for everyone, for anyone that's kind of established a colored career. Well, what's interesting about my career is I've taken different paths. I was an engineer by training. I went to Imperial College in London and then started as essentially a sales engineer in this boutique kind of infrastructure engineering firm, Petrotech, as you mentioned, and then eventually moved pretty quickly into kind of this international development role as kind of more of a salesy front of house type role. And that was pretty successful. But I think the earliest decision I made was back in 97. There was a financial crisis in Asia. A lot of my projects were in Asia. I'd signed all these deals. And as a result of, the devaluation of Russian currency and other things that were happening in Asia, all of those big opportunities, I was young, I was 23, 24 years old, but all those big opportunities were suddenly put at risk. And the one thing I realized is that I really didn't control my own destiny, and that, yeah, it's great. I had a lot of freedom and autonomy to go kind of just do and build business, but I was really doing it for other people. And my talents were going to be far better served if I was thinking about how to build something that I wanted to build, that I was passionate about, with people that I really love. And so that first decision of, let me try and build my own company and try and do my own thing at the age of 23, 24 years old was the biggest fork in the road, without a doubt, of my career. I had a lot of opportunities actually at that point. I had people that had mentors in my early days that had asked me to come and work for them in big banks, asked me to kind of go into other type of engineering roles in larger firms. And I really kind of made that decision of, no, I want to work out of a closet, eat ramen for 6 months and figure out how I'm going to survive while I build my own thing. So that taking on that challenge was probably the biggest early decision I made. And there's plenty more. We'll go through more, I guess, as we talk. I'll bring them up as we go, but that's probably the earliest fork in the road that I took in terms of just defining my career trajectory.
I think it's like really interesting that you have an international experience, as you mentioned, like, you were originally from England, and then like you worked in Asia, like particularly China. I'm from China. And then later
Yeah.
on, like right now you are like in the US. And then like I feel like these global experience are like really interesting. I definitely wanted to dive into your perspective on like how to start a successful business in terms of, like starting it globally, or like hiring it globally. And so you have an incredible career. Who is on your personal board of advisors?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I don't think I have like a permanent like 25-year board of advisors. As I said, my career has moved in various directions. So I went from kind of an engineering firm into a very pure California technology firm. And then from there, I did an MBA at Columbia. And then after that, I built China Export Finance, which was headquartered in London, offices in New York and Shanghai, very, very international. And then DigitalOcean, which brought me back to the US. But you can imagine very, very different markets, very, very different categories. I think early in my career, there were a few people that I met very, very early. Actually, I'll name one guy called Jim Zukin, who was a named potter at Houlihan, Lokey, Howard, Zukin. And he was a pretty successful banker that I worked with on projects when I was at Petrotech, when I was like first doing international engineering projects. And he took a liking to me, and at the time actually asked me if I would come and work for him at Houlihan, Lokey, Howard, Zukin. But I never took that on. But since then, I kind of pinged him back for guidance here and there. And even when I was thinking of going to business school, I talked to him about it. But as I went from career to career, in my earliest careers, I really had very, very few guides and mentors. And I think one of my biggest learnings was I didn't have the right people behind me when I was in my first company. And it left me somewhat on an island. And I had to figure things out, even though I really didn't know what I was doing. And so as I went into my next stages of my career, at every stage I went, I was able to identify people that really shone in those categories. So my board of directors at China Export Finance were, the ex-head of Fitch Ratings, the ex-head of HSBC Asia, like people of that caliber. And they really supported me and helped me and were really there through the tough times of the financial crisis and stuff. And then when we went to DigitalOcean, I was able to connect myself with a handful of, incredible luminary CEOs from the tech world. And they really helped guide me in terms of thinking about how to navigate my way through that opportunity. And now as I'm going more into investing, I'm beginning to kind of connect more with, luminary investors that guide. So for me, it's been an ever evolving kind of bench of really smart people. And since I failed to do that in my first company, I've had really good success in building like great reference points to think about how I'm making my decisions and the directions I'm going career-wise.
Totally. I think like one thing you mentioned were like, in the past like 20 something years of your experiences, you have kind of like always be able to identify someone who is like pretty good at a particular sector and become friends with them, or like they will take a liking on you, like they will kind of mentor you, right? So like as a younger person, especially, like how did you kind of like make sure that they want to help you? Because they could have, I'm sure today you got like 45 LinkedIn message every day to be like, hey, can we grab coffee? Can you like
I
advise?
do get that. That is very true. That is
So
very true. Yeah, the coin is on the other side. First of all, tenacity is everything. Like tenacity and well, a couple of things. First of all, when you're young, you can get away with a lot more, and people have a lot more belief and a lot more willingness to support you in your youth. So if you're able to present yourself in this kind of as this opportunity of success, this opportunity of, you got big thinking, you're smart, you're able to present yourself and all these things. Successful people that have, achieved those things in their lives and are now looking to the younger generation do gravitate towards you. For me, when I was in my 20s and even in my 30s, it wasn't that difficult to identify people that were significantly senior to me that would identify with the journey I'm going through and think highly enough of me to say, hey, I'll support you, not like in a formal contractual manner, but just in a social setting. And so I think the most important thing is to figure out how to get yourself in front of. I mean, LinkedIn messages to me don't work. but how do you get yourself in front of the right people? How do you get yourself in at the right tables, in the right rooms? And then when you're in those environments, just be the best version of yourself you can be, and don't be scared to ask. Don't be scared to go to speak to that luminary that you have a lot of respect for. Find, common points to connect with them on, and identify how they're going to see a little of themselves in you. And if they do, then those are the situations where they're very, very likely to help you. And I have a handful of founders that I've invested in or I just support from an advisory standpoint, and I have very similar, like, reverse relationship at this point in my career, because now I get the opportunity to work with young people that have, a much brighter shining light than I have. So I think it's just really creating that environment where opportunity exists, and just being present, and being willing to ask the question, and being willing to kind of take that first step forward. And I find that, people love to mentor, people love to have a hand in someone else's success. That's a very common trait, especially in the kind of US culture.
Totally. What do you identify as your unfair advantage? And what is one skill you're constantly trying to get better at?
They're both probably the same thing, but let me think about this a second. So, it's a tough question because I don't want to sound arrogant or self-centered, but
It's okay. It's be arrogant.
yeah.
That's
I'm definitely in my career have been very, very good at problem solving, multitasking, kind of a combination of the two, dealing with multiple problems at the same time, navigating them very quickly, and being able to resolve, like, very quickly in my mind how to assess and deal with those problems. That goes hand in hand with the people skills. So the ability to kind of manage and direct and guide people, deliver a vision to people, put people on a path towards an alignment and alignment towards success. The combination of those two things has worked really, really well for my career. So what it's resulted in is really great, smart people looking to me whenever there's a problem to be solved, and then aligning around the vision or the message that I'm trying to deliver, and working as a strong unit. And I think that's really been kind of a formula that I've developed over my career, which has now really, really worked for me very, very well for a while now, and results in, from my perspective, really outsized results and returns on the efforts that have been put in from my teams. The kind of counter to that, which is the area that I constantly got to work on, because it's never the same thing every day, is people. I think any leader will tell you that the biggest challenge that they have, is people. The math might be easy, building the business model or the strategy, that stuff might all be easy to a lot of people. But dealing with the personalities and the sometimes unreasonable grievances and sometimes unrealistic expectations of the people around you, and navigating that to such a degree that you actually still get them to perform at their best, is a challenge, and it is ever changing with every person you work with and every team you work with, and ever the bigger organization. How do you suddenly go from 10 people to 500 people and navigate the difference on how you deal with people and still drive the same level of motivation? And so to me, that is always an ever growing and ever evolving skill set, because every person I meet, it's kind of like every game of chess is different. So every person I meet, you have to think about how you need to deal with that person in order to get the best out of them. So on one side, it's a great skill, but on the other side, it's also a continuous learning effort.
So, like, speaking of venture, before you joined M13, you were at DigitalOcean, right? Like, so DigitalOcean, you joined the team when there were like less of 10 people. You joined them as a COO and then scaled that company to over 500 people, eventually like an IPO and stuff. Like, when you pick what company or what opportunity to pursue, what's your first impression of this company, and then why do you join?
Yeah. So I'll give you a little bit of the kind of origin story there. So I was a couple of years out of China export finance at that point. I sold the company in early 2010. And I was, having worked internationally for 6 years and not really exposing myself to the US tech market, I kind of rebuilt my relationships, my networks, and I was doing a lot of advisory. I was making a bunch of small investments, sitting on boards, things like that, for a couple of years. IA Ventures, which is a prolific firm, early stage firm in New York, really love those guys. approached me having given DigitalOcean a term sheet for their first round of institutional investment and just asked me to come in. They weren't sure of the stability of the underlying business because, they were excited by the story, but it was all very young operators, founders and that. And so they asked me to go in and take a look at the business. And that's what I did. I went in and met the CEO, Ben, and agreed with him to come in on a short-term basis just to help them kind of navigate the planning around the business to get them to a place where they could close this round of funding. So originally I came in to do that, and I did it more to help and support IA, which I was building a relationship with, versus thinking about DigitalOcean as the opportunity. Now, let me frame this in that I think every opportunity in life comes from creating the table for you to sit at. So every opportunity I've ever had doesn't come from thin air. It comes because you've created tables and you sit at those tables. And when you sit at those tables, you can assess the value of those tables and the value of the people at the end, et cetera, and make a logical decision of which table is the right table for you to stay and have dinner. So with DigitalOcean, having spent a couple of years working in the tech community and building relationships, I was presented with DigitalOcean as a business I should look at. I looked at it, I got involved, I helped them build the basic model of the business, helped them build an infrastructure strategy, helped them build their capital strategy around infrastructure, like a whole bunch of things that they just were missing. And ultimately we culminated and were able to close that round of funding for them. It's a very small round, but just kind of got them off the ground. And in doing so, had built this plan and this model that spoke to hundreds of millions of revenue, like 100 million revenue in 3 years. And I was sharing this with, trusted, peers at IA Ventures saying, this is what I think the business will do. And looking at that and seeing the opportunity and having worked for 2-3 months with Ben and NYSE and the team and feeling really good about what they were building, the energy organization, it gave me a huge amount of information to process, to understand, is this where I should plant my flag for the next 5 years of my career? And it was a great decision, the right decision. It was obvious that they needed someone like me that could fill that big kind of operational capability in the business. And for me, it was clear that if I truly believed in the projections and the plan that I put on the table for them, that I would be an idiot to not be a part of that journey. And so we joined forces. I came in, Ben was CEO. I came in as COO, worked alongside him. And, we built up the company over the next 6 years before we brought in an IPO leadership team to kind of take it public. And so that was it. That was a great experience. But as I said, I think, it wasn't an opportunity. It wasn't just kind of off of a whim or off of a single conversation. It was like 2-3 months of a true working relationship that got me to really believe in it as an opportunity that I should take on. And remember, it's the first time that I had not started the company, because the last 2 companies where I was CEO, I started them, I was CEO. So now I was taking a leap of faith to say, hey, this is your company. I could play a really great part in it, but recognizing that I wasn't, the top dog on the heap in this particular business.
I felt like at that point, you probably come across a lot of different opportunities and you really believe in the company. It's like really, it's definitely something like it's a big risk. As a younger person, I also came across some angel investing opportunity, but like I never I guess I would listen to these amazing pitches, but I feel like it's really hard to believe in any of them enough to join one, right? Like it's like 2 different complete stories. And then how did you do the research of DigitalOcean, all the due diligence? Because I personally feel like it's really hard to do due diligence because after, a coffee chat or 3 coffee chats, how would you pursue to make sure you're fully understanding what they're doing, and then also joining them as a COO? As you said, you were the CEO of your own company. Your last company was 9 figures. Why won't you just start something like a competitive company than DigitalOcean to just compete with them? Since you already believe in the market, and then may as well just, put together a team for yourself, right? I guess how do you make these kind of decisions?
Yeah. So it's so interesting. I speak to so many people that are in these turning points in their career where they've just sold something or just exited something or just left something and trying to figure out, what am I going to do next? And the first piece of advice I give them is take on everything. Like, this is what I did after I sold Chinese for Finance. I was financially in a good place. So I didn't have any problems in terms of, oh, I need a salary or I need to. So I was lucky enough to have the freedom to be able to say, let me just go out there and try and see what's out there. So as I network, I mean, I was constantly getting bombarded with people saying, hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? Can you look at this? Can you do that? And as much as it sounded reasonable, I would do it. Yeah, sure, I'll be an advisor for you, or I'll sit on your board, or I'll put $25,000 or $50,000 into this thing as a micro investment, or I'll just come and sit and kind of help you think about your business. And I would activate, I didn't do it blindly. I was doing it kind of somewhat semi-intelligently, thinking about, like, does it actually make sense for me? But if something made sense on the surface, I got involved. And having gotten involved, I would be able to peel back the onion and be able to see what's really going on. And because I had multiple different things going on, no one company ever assumed that I was going to fully commit, which gave me a lot of freedom to do more things with more companies. And with every company, I was able to really start to understand, like, what's the meat on the bone here? What's behind this? What does this really look like? And I saw a handful of companies and got involved with a handful of companies between China School Finance and DigitalOcean that I never committed to, because I could, it got to a certain point and I was like, it could be a decent company. I don't think it's going to be a blowout business. DigitalOcean was the first one that, once I really dug in, I was like, there's real meat on the bones on this one. There's a real opportunity here. And so I think it's just like the same thing as before. You create the opportunities by making sure you're sitting at the table. So sit on as many tables as is reasonable for you to sit on, and taste all of their food and figure out which is the meal that you want to have. And by doing that and being really, really active in that environment, and all the time I'm marketing myself, I'm applying myself, I'm making sure that I'm valuable for people. I'm not just blindly just being arrogant and thinking that I own the world. I'm like really trying to demonstrate to the market that I am an asset that's really valuable. And then by the time I land where I'm going to land, people have already done the homework and kind of understand who I am and what I can bring to the table. And that allowed me to, find myself in the position I found myself in DigitalOcean. So yeah, the core advice to me is, if you're in that stage where you're trying to navigate your next steps, just do more things. Just put yourself in more situations which might create opportunity. And by being busier and busier and busier, you ultimately are able to narrow down and decide, well, these ones don't work for me, and this is maybe not right for this, but begin to navigate to the ultimate one that is the right one to finally, fall in love and get married to.
There's two questions. One question about DigitalOcean, the other question is about like M13, right? So why did you leave DigitalOcean, since like it was about an IPO? It seems like it was doing at its best, right? Like, you joined M13, like, how did you evaluate these two opportunities? And when it comes to M13, why did you feel like M13 was the right place for you?
Okay. So you take me back to 2018, which is the year in which all of this transition happened. So in 2013, the only two original executives left in the business were myself and Ben. Moisey, Ben's brother, was still on the board. Mitch, who is the founding head of marketing, had left the organization already. And Ben and I were the only ones kind of left. And we knew that there was a pathway to going public. I'd already set up, all the basic frameworks of the advisories and the accounting and all the things that we needed to do. And we had the data systems in place, like everything was set up or in the process of being set up to be ready to go public. But we knew that was the pathway we were going. Ben decided that he didn't want to be CEO of a public company. He obviously had accumulated a meaningful net worth and he was ready to kind of move on and do the next thing in his life. And so he decided early that year to formalize a resignation from his position. He retained his board seat, but was now actively looking for a new CEO that would be public market ready. And so that process happened through the year. And in the middle of the year, this new CEO joined the firm. And one of the first things I was tasked to do is to help onboard him and get him up to speed with everything that we were doing and kind of work with him on what the next stage is and what the next strategy is of the business. In the meantime, I was being courted. I was 5-6 years in. I was fully vested on my equity. I was, very comfortable myself. And I was being courted consistently by recruiters left and right for either other operating roles or investment positions in other firms. M13 was an old relationship I had. The founders of M13 I'd known for 5-10 years at the time. And they were approaching me and saying, hey, we want to build a new fund, a new type of fund, like come and work with us. And they were very kind of aggressive on their expectations and their goals, all type of stuff that I really found exciting. So I agreed to actually advise for them throughout 2018 and help them plan out how they were thinking of their fund too and how to institutionalize their investing practice. And so we went through that for the year. And so I built kind of this, again, tasting at the table type experience for the year of 2018 with them, while I was also still entertaining all of these other opportunities that were coming out. In the summer of 2018, in one of my early conversations with the incoming CEO, the question was raised of whether I was willing to commit to another 4 years with the firm or not. Meaning that if he was going to build an IPO team, he needed to know whether my seat was taken or whether he needed to build a fresh new team. I also found out at that time that my wife was pregnant with our second kid. So everything coming together, fully vested. The economic benefit of staying wasn't that huge for me. We'd done essentially what we needed to do, and it was ready to go public. And I knew that being in a public company was never something that truly excited me, because the freedom that you get in a startup, you kind of lose in a public company. So it could have been a direction I went. I could have spent the rest of my life working in public companies, but my decision was more to kind of move away from that. And then it came down to a decision of, do I still want to be an operator, or do I want to invest and work with a portfolio of a broader set of founders? And I've always found passion in working with founders, working with a broad set of problems. And like, it just fit my personality much better. And if you ask my wife, she'll say that for 15 years, I've been saying that ultimately that's what I want to do in my career. And so it just made sense and it fit. And when I found out my wife was pregnant, kind of made my mind up. I gave them 6 months notice. I stayed with the company till the end of the year. And then jumped over January 2nd. That was my first day at M13, and kind of started working on launching Fund 2, building the team, kind of building this whole new type of venture that we were looking to execute against in the market.
I'm curious, like, when you first joined the company, like, because it was, the two brothers and you were advising them on their Fund 2, what were some advice that you gave them early on that you guys implemented, making them very successful today? And when it comes to managing a company and managing a fund, what's the difference?
Very, very different. Let me answer the second question first, and then I'll come back to the first one. So when you're operating, you live with blinkers on. You're so focused on what you're doing. You're so focused on what's right in front of you. All you see is the immediate industry around you and what you're doing to win in that. And so sometimes, and I found in my career, I've lost sight of everything that's happening around. And it's honestly a dedicated life commitment type. And every issue that is a real issue is critical. Like, you can lose, you're not diversified in any way. If you think about it, like, it's having all of your investments in one entity. And then that's where, that'll make or break your life. And so the level of intensity and the level of stress and the level of commitment, it all comes on the other side with an incredible level of achievement and joy and euphoria if you're successful. But the process of getting from here to there is a highly stressful, highly demanding, and highly, just a very, very meaningful experience to go through. I would not change it for the world. I love it. I've done it 3 times, and I have had, luckily, a good amount of success out of it, and the euphoria and the enjoyment and the kind of the self-value that you build out of really going through those challenges is incredible. It's like going to do a marathon or going to do, some crazy challenge and climbing Mount Everest. When you get into a fund, the experience is very, very different. You have a much broader set of challenges, but you have a very diversified position. So you have to kind of take a step back and understand that no one problem is going to destroy anything. It's inevitable that some businesses work and some won't. You do what you can to help where you can help, and you try and be as impactful as possible. And you have a much, like, in my day, I deal with 20 different problems in 20 different categories with 20 different businesses. Like, it's a very, very different, very opposite of blinkered. You're very wide open. You have to see the whole market, and it's much more kind of outward looking, framework of thinking and building. So all my life for 20 years, I was in this blinkered world. And then suddenly I get the opportunity to kind of look up and get this broad view of the market, this broad view of the challenges the founders face. And actually, most importantly, like I joined DigitalOcean because I was really inspired by Ben and NYSE and team, the founders there. And the companies I started before that, I was really inspired by my co-founders. Now I'm in an opportunity where I can be inspired by 20 different founders and 20 different companies. And so it creates a very, very different, much lower stress level, but you feel incredibly productive because you're able to help in so many different ways, in so many broad ways. And you feel like you have the ultimate team because all your portfolio CEOs are people you really believe in. So in that sense, it's just there's a freedom you get, I think, with the investing side. I think you can only really it takes a lot. I'm not going to say it takes a lot of experience, whether investing experience or operating experience, to be able to really get to a place where you can do it very well. So it does take a while to maturate into the role, but ultimately it's incredibly rewarding. In terms of, how we devised M13 and how we built M13 to be different, one thing that my co-founders were also entrepreneurs in their own right before they started investing. And one thing we had very much in common, one of the reasons we really gravitated to each other is we all wanted to disrupt. An entrepreneur's mindset is, how do I disrupt? I don't want to just go build a widget business that's just going to create cash flow. That's great. That's wonderful. But I want to change the industry. I want to change the world. I want to do something that's going to really make an impact. So when we were talking about what M13 could be, my big thing was, listen, I really would love to get into investing. But if I do it, I want to do it with a plan. I want to come in and fix as an entrepreneur, the challenges and the problems that I've had with my investors in the past. I want to resolve that. And it came down to this one general concept, which is most investors, for me at least historically, have been incredibly reactive. What that drives is this tendency for companies to withhold their bad information. And then by the time they deliver that bad information, you get a very reactive response from your investors. And usually it's more negative than it is positive. And it doesn't always help. And it's like too little, too late. And it just areas where you could have solved the problem a lot earlier, a lot quicker, a lot less expensively, and accelerated the business. You're now in a very opposite position because investors are generally hearing the news at the end of the cycle and have become much more reactive in their approach rather than proactive. So the first concept was, we need to build a business that's much more operationally productive. We need to build something that most investors that I've worked with are very vertical. It's like the investing partner and then their vertical capabilities versus a horizontal organization where you have a very collaborative team of people and you can tap into multiple different aspects of their skill sets across the team to help your business. So we wanted to build something that was very horizontal, very collaborative. And so ultimately, we devised this concept of building a very operational heavy investing firm that was focused on getting to know our founders, getting to know their businesses, getting in and behind the scenes on the business such that we can proactively help them navigate the problems we see them potentially coming around the corners on them that they may not be seeing, filling gaps that we know they have in their organization because of just a lack of resources, or potentially identifying opportunities that they haven't seen that we can help them navigate and accelerate or execute on. And so we built that organization and have since then deployed that into the market and have gotten incredible response. Like generally without fail, our founders are saying that we're the most, even if we're not the biggest dollar in their cap table, we're the most valuable dollar, and that we provide the most support, the most help, and that we're the most influential on their success. And that means a lot to us. Their feedback has spoken a lot to us. And then the reputation as a result we've built in the market with other founders and with other investors means a lot as well, because that brings us bigger and better deals and gets us into better opportunities to continue investing our capital.
Totally. I feel like when you mentioned about like creating an environment that's kind of like helping each company like in building like a more flat structure, like you guys are all horizontally helping different people's portfolio companies, like it's working collaboratively is extremely important. When it comes to building a successful fund, like, a lot of the LPs would ask like, why would founders give you the allocation, since like most of the companies that in each category, there may be like 3 companies that are like actually worth the investment, and then like the venture community would all pick on that company, right? Like, so how do you like M13 to be competitive in that zone. So like when the founder
Yeah. So it was a lot harder in the early days when people didn't know who you were. Now that we have a brand and people recognize the value, is like there's a lot of references and referrals and the like that like bring founders to us because they know who we are and they kind of understand what we bring. So it's a lot easier now when we go in and say, hey, this is what we do, because we actually have validation of that. Every investor is going to say, I do everything for you. But at the end of the day, we feel like we've really demonstrated that with our network, our community. So that definitely helps. I think also, to be honest with you, I feel like we approach diligence and we approach our discussions with companies relatively uniquely. I can't really assess how other people do it, but we really are able to kind of get into have empathy for what the business is trying to do and get into the meat of how the business is operating. And we found pretty regularly some of the feedback we've gotten is that the questions we've asked are the most relevant and the most refreshing that a founder has heard. And as a result, founders do often kind of gravitate to, well, I've just had a better experience. I feel like my business better, therefore, you're a better position potentially to be an investor or a board member in my company. And then ultimately, I think we've built an incredibly strong collection of partners, operating partners and investing partners. And so, I find people that are coming in and specifically asking me if I would be on their board, and that's the reason why they want us to invest. Or, Matt Hoffman, from a talent standpoint, or Anna Barber from, investment standpoint. Like there's different people in our firm that just bring a incredible brand with them that is recognized as a hugely helpful brand to founders. And founders do have a selection process of identifying who they want to be married to for the next 10 years.
You just mentioned about like there were founders who would just ask you to be on their board, and you have invested in Bunch, Helmlister, Visser, and a bunch of other companies. So like when it comes to selecting the investment, how did you come across these companies? And then how do you select these companies to become your portfolio?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways we identify companies. The clearest way is the referral network through our peers, through other GPs and other investors out there. And so upstream investors who are investing earlier in the process than us, come to us and kind of invite us to look at companies that they have in their portfolio, and then other investors that are our level ask us to come in and co-invest with them. So we get a lot of that. Also, through just general networking, founder referrals and the like, there's a lot of people that, founders whose boards I sit on or who I work with will tell their founder friends that, oh, you got to talk to Karl. He's a great investor. You should talk to him. He'd be great for you. Or, a lot of that kind of community networking referral component. And then the third channel is really just our direct sourcing, us going out there and identifying industries and categories we want to be in, and then looking at the companies and kind of just tracking down the businesses that we find really exciting. So that's kind of how we get the top of the funnel of kind of the companies we look at. When it comes down to actually making a decision to invest, it's a much more convoluted process. We have a full diligence analysis. We build a whole memo. We have an investment committee internally. I sit on that committee along with my partners, and we truly determine like, what does the business look like? What is the opportunity like? We assess the quality of the founders. We assess the quality of the market. We assess our, modeling of what the business should effectively do and the value that it could effectively create. And, there's a pretty detailed analysis that we go through to make a determination of whether we want to invest or not. And then even at that point, the question is the deal structure right for us? Is the valuation right? Can we put the right amount of money in? Can we get the right amount of ownership? So it's a highly complicated process with multiple different variables associated with it. We move pretty efficiently through it, but it's hard to nail it down to like, oh, this one thing is why we invested. It may be for one particular company, but it may be something else for a different company.
Totally. Can you, let's say like if you and I are raising funding for a company, how would you go about it?
If you and I were raising money,
yeah.
First thing is I would try and tap network. That's the most important thing. I think at least where I am in my career right now, it's best for me to go through the people who know me, because that creates a sense of trust, a sense of belief in my ability to build a business that maybe wouldn't exist if I was just cold calling someone. but I would focus on network first. Now, network of other founders or network of other investors, but those are the two strongest ways to get in and to be connected into the investment community. So I would really, really start there. Having said that, a lot of it comes down to how are you actually presenting the company? How are you packaging it? What stage are we talking about here? Is this like literally the very first founding of the business, or is this like at the point where already have a product market fit and going out to look for a Series A? And so, those will have slightly different strategies on who you want to talk to, where you want to get the money from. I'd say I'm probably at this stage of my career a little more blessed with the ability to walk into somewhere just because my name will help me in the door. If you're looking at someone who's earlier in their career, then it's literally a test of your ability to identify the network that gets you access to the people you need to get access to, and then be able to deliver a vision that's inspiring very, very efficiently. And so really, if I was a founder or someone who's actually thinking, I'm going to go out and raise money at whatever stage, think about how you're delivering the vision. At the end of the day, investors are going to invest in you as an individual more than anything else. If they don't believe in you, they don't believe in anything. If they believe in you, then they'll look at your business and then make a determination of whether the business is the right business for them. But really being able to deliver that vision and really be able to be an inspirational speaker and an inspirational business builder is something that kind of every investor is looking for.
What was the most interesting pitch you've heard lately in terms of like an inspiring story?
So I'll tell you a story. It's now like maybe 3 years old, and I made this investment. It's actually one of our most successful investments. It's a fantastic company. But I went to speak. I went to do a lecture at Yale in the MBA class at Yale, and there was 30, 40 students in the class. And at the end of the class, all the students were asking me questions, and one student stepped up and said, "Hey, do you mind me just walking you to your Uber to go back to the train station?" I'm like, "Sure." Young guy, he was an ex-football player, quite big and bulky. If nothing else, he'd be a great security guard to help me get to my car safely in New Haven, which is not that dangerous of a city. But nonetheless, he was engaging, he was friendly, and he walked me to the car. And then he pitched me on the way to the car about his business. And himself, he was clearly just a very engaging and just like wonderful person, regardless of anything else. So it was just a joy to just kind of have that walk with him and just kind of hear his energy and hear his youthful exuberance. But the story he told me was about how he had experienced school shootings as a kid. And he was actually not an MBA student. He was an undergrad, and he was just auditing the MBA class and just came to my class to hear me. And that he was really impacted by the school shootings and wanted to build something that would help solve or help in those situations. And his initial idea was a kind of emergency application that students would have, which allowed them to all communicate in times of crisis with the security system in the school and make sure that information was more efficiently delivered through video, texts, pictures, whatever, around what was happening within a school shooting type scenario. And it was incredibly, you could tell like his emotional connection to the story because of his experience, and you could see the passion and not even thinking about, what would a business model look like. Immediately I was like, you know what, I want to help you. That's such a great mission. Like that's such a positive and world improving mission that you're thinking about. Like, I'm happy to help you. So wasn't even thinking about investing. And he just basically said to me, can I call you? Can I lean on you? And for the next 9 months, we would communicate, and I'd give him guidance and advice and direction and like my thoughts on what he was doing. And 9 months later or 7 months later or something, he called me, he goes, "Hey, I just got awarded the Teal Fellowship. They're going to pay me $100,000 to leave Yale." I'm like, "Congratulations, that's fantastic. So I'm going to go for a dinner and this, that, and the other." And then, so he officially left Yale. And he's like, "Now I'm going to take on investment." And his business model had evolved. The model was beginning to make sense. And he was just one of these guys that was just knocking down doors. And every time I speak to him, I'm like, "Well, you should do this." And then a month later, he'd call me and go, "Well, I did it." And I'm like, "You did it already? Okay, well, then you should do this next." And he'd go and do it. He'd go and do it. And so rarely do we make really, really early investments as small as we did in this company, but we made a super early investment in him just because I just was so inspired by him as an individual. And since then, first round came in and did the Series A. We followed in and did an extension to that to get, to increase our ownership position. And now they've just got I think by the time this is aired, it's probably public news, but I won't mention the name, but top 5 VC deal, which is actually just got funded last week for their Series A, their full Series A. So sorry, first round did the seed. And this company did the Series A. It's a household name, basically. And again, we participated in that round, and it is performing incredibly well beyond anyone's expectations. He's now 24 years old.
Oh my God.
Just youthful, great, amazing energy, just really, really proven himself. And the beautiful thing about him is he's so humble, and he's so willing to listen and learn and grow and develop himself as much as he's building this business. And it just makes, anyone as a mentor, as a guide, or as a support for him feel really good about any conversation they have with him. So God bless him. It's a fantastic business, and it's really, really doing incredibly well. That's actually a great example, right? Because he had no right to be in that class. He forced himself, and he persuaded the professor to let him order that class. He then persuaded me to let him walk into the car. He created the opportunity from nothing. And that was the seat at the table that he established that gave him the reason. And now you can see from everything he's done since that he continues to do that. He continues to find the tables that he should be sitting on, and he continues to sit at those tables. And from those become the opportunities come that are building the business that he's building.
Wow, that's crazy. I feel like this is definitely a really inspiring story and inspiring company to watch. In terms of fundraising, VCs and themselves have to fundraising from LPs, right? How do you construct a really good portfolio to keep going? And obviously investing in really amazing, talented people like that person is really important, but also constructing a really solid portfolio, it's a different story. So how do you think about portfolio construction, and how do you keep differentiate M13 among other VCs?
Yeah. So we think about investment in 3 stages. The first stage of the investment is putting the money into the companies. Second stage of investment is building company value. You have a mature portfolio. Now you have to actually build the value of that portfolio. And then the third stage investment is monetizing and actually creating a return for your LPs. And I think what you have to do is you have to demonstrate that you can do all 3. Mm-hmm. So, I was blessed by having partners that had a fund before I joined that has been very, very successful. There are 3 core metrics that you think about in investing. One is the MOIC, which is the return on invested capital. That's unrealized, but it's basically the mark to market of the valuation and of the portfolio. Sorry, the mark to market of the portfolio valuation, and it just tells you theoretically how much value you've built. Then you have DPI, which is actually the actual dollars returned to investors, which is again a multiple of the money they put in. And then you have IRR, which is your return. Now IRR changes over time because it's a time-based calculation. MOIC. Before 2021, MOIC was the biggest thing people checked on. They knew most of their returns were unrealized, but if they had a very big MOIC number, they were super excited about it. After 2021, because the markets crashed and all valuations went through the floor, MOIC didn't mean anything anymore. So yeah, you can have a good MOIC, but it's not going to get you a next round of LPs. DPI, on the other hand, is something that very few firms actually focus on as much as they should. Luckily, our fund 1 has returned 2.9x DPI already. So 2.9 times the money invested has already been returned. MOIC is up at 8 or 9x, which is really great. And so those results really demonstrate kind of the core capability of our ability to actually put money to work. And we're beginning to see very early signs of that in Fund 2. But Fund 2 is really much more focused now on the growth, the second stage of investment, which is we have a portfolio. The portfolio is now at a stage of maturation. And so now we're driving those businesses into growth investments and the like, taking on growth investments and the like. And that portfolio is growing. And we've proven through all of the impact that we've had through our platform work, we've proven clearly that we can add value there. And then the final is, if you look at Fund 3, that's where we're actively investing. And so when you think about active investing, what are the premium deals you're getting in? What valuations are you getting in? How are you getting treated by the founder community? And again, we've demonstrated that. So in terms of LPs, like the key is to show them that we can execute on all three parts of those. We built, a portfolio that is relatively focused. It's diverse in terms of the applications, the actual, we invest in the future of health, the future of money, the future of work, and the future of commerce. So it's diverse in terms of the application set, but it's relatively focused in terms of the stage we're coming in at, the types of businesses we like, the types of models we think that can build value. And as you build that, you have a diversification of categories, so you don't have any concentration risk in terms of category, but you have a pretty clear understanding of where we perform the best, and that's at the Series A, sometimes late seeds, but usually Series A type investment stage. And so, yeah, we've been blessed in that because we've been on such a growth trajectory as a firm, from a brand perspective as much as from a building perspective, even though the investment, the LP community is very much down on their investments into venture because, their public investments have been struggling so much. We've actually had an increasing level of interest and excitement in us as an emerging manager because we're performing really, really well. So it's been very, very, very helpful in thinking about future funds to be raised and how we think about kind of transitioning into our next fund.
Totally. What would you say were, like, let's say 3 keywords that you would describe M13?
Collaborative, proactive, and I'd like to say bright.
I love that.
And just so you know, the theme of that, M13 stands for Messier 13, which is the brightest cluster of stars in the sky, in the night sky. And the idea of that particular cluster of stars is that the combined brightness of the cluster is greater than the individual brightness of all the stars individually. And so it's the theme of when you align all the light in the right way, you create an outsized return. And that's kind of the way we think about the business, the kind of the ethos and the values that we built around the business. And that's kind of what those words really stand for.
I feel like you have built a tremendous brand for yourself in the venture community. How do you kind of like quickly build a brand for yourself, since you are only in the venture industry for 4 years, or right now it's about to be 5 years, but now you become like this person who is, I can see you at every conference.
Yeah, so there's no such thing as quick. So you ask, I think it's Usain Bolt said this really prolific statement. He was like, I worked for 4 years nonstop to race for 9 seconds, to perform for 9 seconds. And so the idea is that, I put in a year, a life of career. When we talk about this podcast, 70 to 80% of the podcast was discussing my life before venture. It was discussing all the things I was able to achieve and do and execute and things that inspired me before venture. And the very tail end is, okay, so now how have you translated that into investing? And I think that's reflective of what's allowed me to put myself out there and build kind of a brand or a relationship with the community and with my peers. And so I don't think anything is quick or anything is easy. If you build up your ammunition, if you build up like the reserves that you have from all the experience and everything you've done in your career, you can put that to work in a concentrated way to allow people access to understand and to learn that. And, and I've been lucky enough to have been given, the microphone a handful of times, and thanks to you again for doing that for me. But it allows me to speak my truth and to kind of share my thoughts with the world, and hopefully people find wisdom in it. And if they do, then that creates value, and that's my goal. So yeah, I think it's the culmination of a lot of life's work to get to a place where you have enough knowledge or enough wisdom, to humbly share with the world, that people actually find interest in it and find value in it. And I think I'm lucky to have been in a place of wide set of experiences that are really interesting to a lot of people. And that's allowed me to speak to those and see if I can help other people think through their challenges.
Totally. I really love like what you said about like, it may seem like it's a 4-year experience, but like it's literally your whole life journey. And like a lot of the insights were actually from the operating experience day to day back then to, transform into the knowledge and like the guidance and the venture experience. So we're at the last part of the interview. I have a 1 minute fire round for you. What's your book?
With Dahlia, Changing World Order.
Wait, not the other one, the more popular one, Principle? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I like the Changing World Order. It's about the global economics, the history of global economics, and how power shifts have happened in currencies in the last 2,000 years. It's incredibly interesting and is so relevant to today's world and what's happening with the US dollar. So I think it's a really great book.
Amazing. Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Do they have to be alive?
Your party, so.
Who would I invite? I would probably invite the likes of Muhammad Ali, Mahatma Gandhi, people who have influenced culture in the world over the last 100 years, I think, more so than maybe a couple of core business leaders that I just find truly interesting, like the Elon Musks of the world, but probably more kind of the cultural influences of the world.
Nice. Who made the biggest impact in your career?
Ironically, I want to say someone you've never heard of, and that'd be my wife.
Oh, nice.
Because she was with me during the financial crisis when I was running a fintech firm, and her support and the security I had through her emotionally helped me navigate some of the toughest times in my business career. It's probably an unusual answer, but that's what I'm going to give.
No, I definitely feel like spouse or like your family support system is crazy important, especially during the up and downs of a career change. And I think that's a really beautiful answer.
Yeah, hopefully it buys me some credit at home as well. So I might play this for her.
But we'll play this for her. Where can we find you outside of work?
I have young children, and so you can generally find me next to my daughter's soccer field or watching my other daughter play tennis or at a music recital or somewhere that's probably related to kids more than anything else.
Oh, wow. Maybe you guys went to see the Barbie movie since you have 2 daughters.
We did. Yes. We did do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karl, for coming on the show and sharing your amazing journey with us. And I love all the conversation we had today.
Thank you, Grace. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into Smart Venture Podcast. If you learned something from the episode or even just mildly tolerated me, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. I promise I will keep bringing you more successful, insightful interviews and insider tips about startups. Remember, sharing is caring. So tell your friends to listen too, or enemies, I won't judge. Until next time, keep venturing smartly.